So about 2 years ago, I made a video about the book Something Like Summer by J. Bell, and since then there has been the sequel Something Like Winter, which this video is going to be a comparison of both books and the differences between the two. This is one of my favorite book series ever. It's one of the only books I can actually read and get into besides Chris Colfer's books, but so I fell in love with the first book a couple years ago, and I've read it a couple times. It's been a while since I have, but what I loved about Something Like Winter is because it did give you a sort of refresher of what happened in the first book. This is kind of like my book club of sorts, so if you haven't read it, I definitely would read it before watching this because there's a lot of spoilers or just mainly discussing the book in general. But if you do read it and you do watch this, there are some twists and things that I didn't mention in this video that you should just read it on your own and find out how amazing it is. If you don't know what it is, it's a gay romance novel about two boys, Ben and Tim, who meet in high school during an accidental collision caused by Ben, and Ben helps Tim get better after he breaks his, I think it might have been his ankle, yeah, and they sort of have this friendship that comes about from that. And Ben is openly gay, and Tim is this new popular kid. He just comes in and he's all of a sudden popular because he's rich and good looking and good at sports and stuff. And they kind of have to keep their friendship a secret because of Ben being gay, and this is in the 90s. So while today it's still an issue of being gay, especially like bullying in school, it's a little more tolerated nowadays. Still bad, but you know, back in the 90s, a little bit even more of a hush-hush still then. So, yeah. And eventually their friendship grows into something sexual, and we see what happens with that, and then it sort of turns into a romance. In the first book, it's Ben's perspective on the whole thing. He sees this cute new kid who he has a crush on, and he realizes he's always one of those popular kids, and we get to see from Ben's eyes and what happens between them during this high school relationship, and then afterwards, after they break apart and years on, and Ben moves on and finds someone else, falls in love again, and we get to see that whole story with Jace and whatnot, and how Tim comes into his life all over again and the circumstances with that. And what I loved about Something Like Winter is because we get to see Tim's side of the story. And I'm a huge fan of freaking, I don't know why I said freaking, but huge fan of like closeted coming out stories, coming to terms with their sexuality, hidden teen love, romance, high school things. You know, those are my things. It's not, you know, necessarily a good thing, but it's very interesting to me, and that's what maybe gravitated me towards this series. And Something Like Winter is Tim's perspective, and what I love about this is it reveals a lot of new things. Like, before he even met Ben, he was questioning himself, and what I love about Tim, he wasn't always like, oh no, I'm not gay. He just never really thought about it, you know, but he still didn't want to lose his popularity and his family and, you know, having all those easier things than being gay, especially when you're younger. But this story, Something Like Winter, is all in Tim's perspective and what happens when he falls in love with Ben, because we never saw that. We just thought in the first book he wanted just a sexual thing, and then eventually, but I think he always had eyes for Ben, and he loved that he can sing well, and that he was very confident in himself and in his sexuality, and you know, he held his head up high, and I think Tim always admired that in him. And what goes on after that, and what I loved about this one is the story of him in college. He's in a fraternity, and he fools around with guys that are closeted, and he is very more open of himself, but he's still in the closet. And he meets Eric, who's like a wiser role model for him, like a father figure, and all the stuff that happens there, I just was so intrigued. And then he came out and they kicked him out, and what happened was with his relationship with Eric, and he grew as a person, and also then the Ryan drama, and after Eric's death, because not only did he lose Ben, but he also lost Eric in a totally different way, and it's like, Tim is just not having the best luck, is he? And all the Ryan stuff too, and we didn't really see that much in the first book, because in the first book, the minor characters in that story become the major ones in Something Like Winter, which I think is amazing, like Marcello and Chinchilla, and I I love the first book, but this book is like totally something new, but yet it's in the same story, but it's told from a different point of view, and it just like so many new things come out and you think, wow, it's gonna be like almost the same thing, but no. I love that the first book was much more detailed of their high school relationship, but the second book is more detailed as they grow on and become adults. And while I love Jace, I really wanted to see more of Ben and Tim itself. So what I loved about the second book is we get to know Tim more, and in the first book he kind of makes it seem like he's not so much the best person. Like, you don't want to root for him, you want to root for Jace because he seems more like the better person for Ben. But this book just, whoo, I always rooted for Tim, but you know, and there's always two sides to a story, and that's what I love about this, is they're totally different, same story, but they're just so different to each other, and they come all together in the end, and it's amazing. And I was blown away by how much I was just like so captivated, you know. I love how something like summer, or just summer in general, is warm and falling in love and fun. But then, like, every season, it comes to an end, and after summer comes fall, and then depressing winter. And then winter's like dark, depressing, and dreary, and cold, and sad, and it was such a great way to do that. I don't know if that was meant to be on purpose, but I love that idea. And what I love about this book is we get to see Ben's thoughts externally, opposed to the first book where he's thinking his inner thoughts, but you can see in Tim's eyes what Ben feels, and what is he going to do with Jace, and what is he going to do with his feelings for Tim even after all these years, after everything they went through. And what I love at the end is that he says he's still in love with Tim after everything, and that's just how I feel like they're soulmates, because after everything they went through, they still are meant to be, and it's just like love conquers all. And it's not even just about two guys falling in love, it's just two people falling in love, and I was like, oh. I also love how Allison played in this story in this one. While I did say it's been a couple years since I've read something like Summer, I definitely knew and figured out more in the second book of especially Allison's thoughts, and I love how in a sense she was kind of like, you know, Jace and Ben just deserve each other, but I think that she always wanted Tim to be in Ben's life. I think she always knew that Ben's heart was for Tim. And I think one of my favorite parts of the book itself in general was the ending, where in the first book that we see that they gonna start over again after Jace's death, and them meeting again after everything, even years on. But then they go back to Houston where it all started, and we also see that Tim comes out to his parents, and then they meet Ben again, and how he is still in Tim's life, and how much he changed their son's life, and how unaccepting they are. And then we get to see they go to Mexico to see Tim's grandmother, who is much more accepting of their relationship and Ben's and Tim's sexuality, and I just love that they're like just falling in love with each other all over again. And we also see that Ben's a little reluctant, because however it was a few years that Jace has died, he still, you know, feels like there's something that he's just not ready for yet, but eventually, you know, he realizes that Tim is the only one. And I just love how they just fell in love all over again. We got to see things that, while they did get to do things in the first book that they never got to do when they were younger, that they finally got to do those things like hold hands in public, or kiss, or just show affection that they couldn't do when they were younger, and that they could do as adults because they were both out and proud and in love. What I love about this book series as well is that it's very realistic to real life. It's not always just happy romance and fluffy times and always just in love and everything's okay and everything's gonna be okay, because that's not how it always is, and people break up and people have fights, and but somehow maybe they get back together. And what I love about especially when they did get back together is how realistic it was, how they just didn't click right away, that life always gets in the way of things and feelings always get in the way of things, and sometimes you just gotta let it take time and do its thing and run its course. And I just love it. That's why I love the movie Get Real, because it was getting real, and I think that is a great thing that when writers do that. So I think something like Winter changed my life. I definitely was on the verge of tears quite a few times, and I was finishing the book when my sister was in the room, so I don't want to like cry because she'll laugh at me. She always laughs at me when I cry about things. And but it's a moving book, and I think I just definitely recommend for you to read something like Summer and then something like Winter, because there are a lot of references obviously from the first book to the second. So go read them. They're both on Amazon, and you will just be blown away by how amazing the writing is. And I just think, Jay, you stepped up like with something like Winter. Something like Summer is brilliant. Something like Winter, I just fell in love with Tim more and more, and I want to hug Tim Wyman and Ben Bentley, and I want to squish them together and just let them love each other. And I love at the end where Tim proposes. And I also found out, yeah, that they're going to have 2 more books, something like Autumn, which is Jace's life, and something like Spring, which is their future, after Ben and Tim at the end of the second book. So I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. So yeah, favorite parts were definitely the Tim and Eric parts, him in college, just the new things I think were really nice to read differently. And also the side of Tim and how he fell in love with Ben, because we didn't get to see that in the first one. So oh gosh, I could just talk about it for years and years and years. I might read it again like soon, because it was just, oh gosh, I just love it. And I'm really excited for the movie too, like to see the author's thoughts on what he actually thinks the characters look like, because yeah, you can read it, but like you're picturing it something totally different in a sense, you know, the imagination and how it's gonna come to life. And oh, I'm geeking out. Thanks for watching, subscribing. Sorry if I blabbered on. Well, I always do that. And go read something like Summer and something like Winter. Oh, look good. I always also picture Tim. I think I mentioned this in the first video that I made, but it was a while ago. I keep picturing Tim as the douchey guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, the Joey guy who's like Bianca's boyfriend, dickhole. And yeah, I don't know why, because he's like Italian, but Tim is like Mexican Latino, so obviously not. So let's just not. And I always picture like Ben now, sort of like a Kurt Hummel from Glee kind of thing, because of their confidence, and they sing, and they're both beautiful people. I know they're 2 different people, but that's just how I kind of see it in my head a little bit. But no, that's just the way I think, I guess. Jay, your books are amazing. Your writing is incredible, fantastic, amazing. And I can't wait to read the next books and see the movie and just continue to be this crazy fangirl for this amazing book series for the rest of the seasons, you know, And yeah, so go read. Okay.